Hi, I'm Jesse Dillon, and this is my co-host,
Priscilla Cohen. Today we're talking with Kristy Edmunds, the Executive and Artistic Director at the Center for the Art of Performance at UCLA. And we're talking
about what it would, talking about what it actually means to be a curator and how curators help preserve diverse art forms.
We're also talking about the importance of art administrator in giving artists the time, money, and freedom they need to create our great works of art. And that is really important because if she doesn't do it, if somebody doesn't do it, it's not going to happen.
We also talk about the role of the artist in society and the importance of sharing the communal, fleeting experience of live performance, whether it's possible to decouple art from commerce, and the importance of good flyer.
But first, please click and also subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch this and more episodes, or subscribe to Jesse's Office wherever you stream your podcasts.
Okay, good.
Jesse doesn't get water. I've decided water is scarce. We have to just be
Water scarce, and I don't get to have
and
any.
he doesn't get to have any. No, I'm kidding. And no, Jesse, do you want a water? You have like
I have two waters. Yeah.
Pellegrino.
Do you guys need to make adjustments, or are we good to go? We good to go? You know, Jeremiah, this is not working, this monitor.
Yeah.
It's always a thing, you know. I'm trying to. Is it broken?
No.
What is the role of artists in society? Because it's not really to make everything that's comfortable, isn't it? That they in fact, when we say they're dangerous, they should be.
Yeah. Well, I think it's some people might say they're a bit of a bellwether or the canary in a coal mine, and they have the expressive truths through their art forms that allow us to be awake to the world and what's going on in it differently. So I definitely think that sometimes an artist will do that through giving us something that's profoundly sublime. Other artists will shake us by the throat and force us to look differently at something that we either numbed ourselves to or dismissed or didn't want to confront. But one way or the other, your complacency is disrupted.
You've got all these venues, and you have these ideas. Like, what's your role that you have to fulfill at UCLA?
It's a bit like a contemporary art museum. There's specialization in print and drawing and photography and installation and sculpture and things like that. And you're looking after the art forms and the artists who are clearly masterful at those art forms, as well as those who are emerging. And I do that in the live performing arts space. So it's literally dance, theater, all the different kinds of contemporary music, and then people who are from more of the writing and literary world, or people who are from a kind of cinematic digital world that are not migrating their work towards commercial output, but really conjoining the history of those forms.
Is the stage a safe space? Well, I mean, not in a classic sense of a safe space, but just.
I mean, when I think of the stage, the performance venue, whether it's somebody who's lecturing, talking, performing, dancing, choreographing, doing music, whatever it is, often there are a lot of different kinds of dangerous, tenuous, vulnerable ideas that are going on. They're going on in the performers, and they're going on for us as audience members. But it's in a way, and it's like, how do you create a safe space for dangerous ideas? How do you create a safe space for a secular community to gather with their curiosity, their own vulnerability, their lack of awareness in certain ways, and their profound, deep advocacy for the very thing that they're going to see, the very artist that they're going to see. So to me, it's that. It's this mashup of how do we make sure that these spaces, which are secular, they're secular, public gathering, this is the watering hole for new knowledge in many cases. And I try and make sure that the people who are on that stage are generous, are keen, are deeply engaged, and that they have what I call real perspective.
In a sense, they're time travelers because you have to commission this work very early. So what's the lead time on these projects, and how much interaction do you have to have with that artist to coax them into the?
With some of the artists, they have management and agents around them, and it's a matter of kind of brokering that sort of exchange, but still trying to speak to the soul of what you're after, which is not a business exchange, although there's compensation. Other artists, it's literally multiple years in advance. There's a doodle on a napkin, and at some point it's going to turn into like a large framework choreography. And we go all the way across that journey.
So tell me about this one. About Ann Hamilton, and tell me about how this came to be. Or should I play a little of it first?
Yeah, let's play.
Yeah, play a little.
Play a little first. So this is for people, and you can go to some of these links and look. This is in the Armory in New York, and it's this beautiful fabric that's blowing. And let's let Ann speak for herself.
In the middle, under the cloth, I knew it would be a really wonderful place to stand, to have the kind of turbulence and the liquidity of the cloth fall around you. But I was totally unprepared for the fact that people would lay down on the floor and stay horizontal for a long, long time. There was a family in here yesterday that was here for 3 hours.
Billowing clouds. Will you describe the show, and how I imagine you had to work together for a long time to be able to get here.
Well, Ann Hamilton is one of the great installation makers, and one of the great artists, and I think also one of the great thinkers. And the journey there was when I was running the programming at the Park Avenue Armory. I knew that it was the right venue. I mean, Ann Hamilton works on scale. When she has scale in front of her and she has the right kind of support around it, she can make some of the most enduring works ever. And so I knew it was like, sometimes when you're thinking as an artistic director, you're like, until I get a chance to work with this particular artist, my life will not be complete. And she's definitely one of those artists. So it took us a couple of years.
And did she say, here's what it's going to be, or were you you were just going? No. So what's the collaboration between you like?
Well, with an artist like Ann, it's about how will this artist find form? What are the ideas that are rummaging around in there, rattling around? What is she preoccupied with? And then how does she spend time, creative research, studio time, all of those things to try and attempt finding form? She is not the kind of person that you would say, well, we will do this. In fact, I never do this with artists. We'll do your project if you give me a full-scale model, price to spec, et cetera, because you're not in a journey then. It's just pure labor, and you miss the magic of what they can make. So you have to have enough cojones, I would say, to really ride the rail of their own research vulnerability. They, half the time, and for a long time, do not know what they're going to make.
Was there a theme there, or what was a thing, a germ of what she wanted?
There were three things that she was very interested in. One of them was that she had not exhibited in New York City for a very, very long time. She wanted to come back into the city that she has had a long history with prior and try and find, how do I make a gift? How do you make a gift to a community, to a culture? How do you find a form to make a gift through your art? Which is a really important sentiment. So she was interested in that. She was interested in interdependence, the way in which we have a really deep societal interdependence, which is what the swings are actually doing in this installation with that fabric. And the other thing that she was questioning quite a bit, and she'd spent a lot of time with, she's a voracious reader, so she was thinking about who gets to do the public utterance, like who gets to take the civic square and have a public verbal utterance, who's privileged, who's not, et cetera, et cetera. So there are all of these readers that are running through this particular installation, and you are being read to. You're being read to, and we ended up creating this, radio broadcast bootleg thing in the Armory because it's huge. And the readers are stationed at a place when you walk into the installation. They're just reading various texts that Ann had woven. So they don't have a narrative sensibility. They just have sentence frameworks. And they're broadcast into a brown bag that people would carry. And so you're literally holding someone's voice as you walk around. And it provoked people to meet and intersect with other people there who were complete strangers and would say, you got to hear this here. And they would hand the voice to another. these touch points were weaving. What she does is weave, and she weaves metaphor, she weaves people, she weaves humanity, and she weaves.
So over those 2 years, are you going to coffee shops and talking to her? Is your role in that context to be the messenger, to serve her ideas? Like, how does it work? How do you work with an artist?
Well, she's a specific kind of artist, and in that case, I mean, it was much more like the two of us having a conversation back and forth about lots of different layers, lots of different ideas. I would go to her studio, which is in Columbus, Ohio. She was testing swings. The swings are another important thing because you're doing a lot of engineering. And in that case, we had to figure out the throw length from the swings, from the girders at the top of the armory's infrastructure. Means that you're not swinging in a traditional sense like a child on a swing. You're actually traveling. The pendulum, it's a pendulum. And so we were having to do a lot of math and engineering across these pendulums. Her team was working with my team. And eventually what you started to see was all these different elements were starting to crystallize for her. And she would then seek me to go, well, what do you think of that? And I would, of course, be, I think that's great. Or I think that is an idea that we need to work now on the sequencing of a bureaucracy to make sure that we can come out on the other end to yes. So don't commit 100% to that thing as the most essential piece because it's going to drive the greatest amount of hardship across getting permits and yeses. But let's keep moving.
Were you with her the first day that it opened, the first moment that it opened?
Yeah.
And what was her feeling, her reaction when she saw people and they came in, they laid down on the ground, they looked up at these billowing things? It was because she said she didn't anticipate that. So
these are not the kind of projects you can practice at home, as you might imagine. So you're discovering the whole layer through. So as it opened, what you see with an artist is absolutely fascinating. It's as if they have given the work away. Now it is owned by the participants attending, and they're watching it almost from a third person, like it's a thing that someone made, someone other than them.
Right.
And yet the joy on her face and the exhaustion. I mean, this is work. The work is hard and it's long. And by the time you open on a project like that, and many of them, the sort of triumph of having pushed your energy loads and sleep deprivation to the nth degree, and to fall towards the thing that now exists outside of you with people you don't know, finding it in exactly the kinds of things you hoped, mixed with all this new material you would discover. Like, we did not think that people would lay down beneath that billowing, turbulent curtain of silk. I mean, it took about a year just to select the fabric on that thing. So it's deep, deep diligence, and then the elements are in place, and then there's a kind of choreography of how they come together. But for any artist, Anne included, the work is not completed until the public is there.
So I have a question about this because everything that you do is really about being in the room. It's about we're sharing space in the real world, right? And many of us are not in the real world anymore. And so, first of all, does this art?
Yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we know Jesse's not.
Sure.
Does this art, this project, and a lot of the projects that you work on, does it belong only in the real world? One. Two, if we're watching it, Jesse said, hey, click on the link, let's go. And how are you thinking about that now when you're creating things, knowing, first of all, not everybody has the ability to get to that space. So how do you reconcile all that?
Well, I mean, there's a long tradition of live performance in human history that we can't go back and look at, but somehow we can believe and detect that its presence was there. And the kind of remnant elements, whatever that would have been, are part of how we feel the fact of its existence. But to me, yes, we would not in a live performing arts related world or visual as performance, installation, for example, we would not make it purely for a cinematic, documentation. You make it because time and place are actually part of its material.
Right.
And performers know that what they make is going to be temporary, and it will only land in the experience of a certain number of people. unless it's touring. And even then it's fixed and finite. And that's actually part of the work, the understanding that there will be a person in this room where, let's say, it's the first time they've ever been to a theater. And there will be a person in this room for this performance, and it may be the last time they're at a theater. And they perform for those people and every pole in between, and not really beyond that point. So video documentation and links and having clips that we can, and photographic documentation and various things are all part of its artifact. And you can be inspired by what you think might have happened, but you can't smell what that smelled like in there, and you can't feel the wind on your face there, and you can't feel the hair standing on end, and you can't smell the lady's perfume next to you in the seat, or a young child that you happen to notice was so profoundly awake he could barely sit in his seat. Those are all part of what's going on in the possibility of this form.
What did it mean to say goodbye to Merce Cunningham?
Ooh.
Let me just play a clip of that. This was a London park because there's no film of I couldn't find any. Did you feel a sense of responsibility being that this was going to be the end? And will you please tell the story?
Sure. Well, with Merce Cunningham, he was truly one of the greatest choreographers of the 20th century and into the 21st. He was figuring out what he was going to do with the dance company. He knew he was already in a wheelchair. He already had to have nurses traveling with him. He didn't go on the road with the company very much anymore. So he was figuring out what he wanted to do with the legacy of the dance company. And he told me about it, actually, when we were sitting outside having a beer at the Melbourne Festival. And I said, you need to tell your board and your staff, this is maverick and it's great. And what he set into motion was literally, rather than have the Merce Cunningham Dance Company become a repertory company and continue, he set a time limit on that to be 2 years. And that would be a legacy tour. And after that, on the knocker, literally, the company would disperse and dissolve. And so I was there for that. He had put it in his will that he wanted to have someone, that one of his wishes was that someone in New York would present one of his events, and the tickets would be $5 and there would be no comps. And so we did that on the very last night at the Armory of the dance company. So they'd had their 2 year, and now literally at midnight on that particular New Year's Eve, the Merce Cunningham Dance Company would go off the clock. And so we did that.
This example, and then the one that you just talked about having to be in the space, is, this reminding us of the frailty and the fleetingness of our own lives, right? We're not going to live forever. So we all should have some experiences that are communal that don't last forever. How do we think about that?
Well, that's a lot of terrain to cover, but
you have some time.
One of the things that I will say sometimes when I'm standing, usually at Royce Hall on the stage or maybe over at the Ace, but I in kind of welcoming people and settling people in, because you want them to kind of settle in for a second. I'll say, we have a job to do together, and the job we have together in this moment, in this time, on this night, is to make a memory. We have a job to do by making a memory with this artist that gives us as audiences essentially the role of being the permanent collection. We're the living archive of what's going to happen. And how that goes into us matters, right?
Yeah, they're making
Do you
too
want me
much
to keep
noise.
talking? Speakerphone. Can I get some more coffee?
Do you want more coffee? All right, more coffee.
But it's. Should I keep going?
Yeah,
Shall I keep going?
yes.
Yeah, we'll get you coffee.
And there's something that happens because it moves people from thinking, am I in the right seat? Was the traffic, was my stress of the day? And all of that stuff goes away because people are given a task. And the task really is about conjoining a moment in time that is only going to live on based on what they remember of it, literally. And I think people really rise to that. So that
Let's
piece
get more
of it.
coffee. I'm
More
sorry,
coffee?
just stepping
Hey,
on you.
thanks.
You like
We're having
milk and
coffee.
Sugar?
A little bit of cream.
A little bit of cream and
And
that's it. No sugar.
No sugar,
Got it.
thanks.
Okay, I'll be right back.
So that's part of it. The other thing is that, these halls that we do live performance in, they were always built by a different generation. They were built by a different generation who had a dream of what it meant to make that kind of architecture possible for the exchange of ideas between performers, musicians, composers, etc., and the inhabitants of the community of the day.
How important is for artists to have a good audience, and how do you
What is
because
a
when
good
you took
audience?
when you took over, there wasn't there wasn't much audience. So do you have to go sit down with the community, and how do you even go about thinking about that and doing it?
The audience is crucial. As I was saying earlier, I feel like for any artist, unless they're just completely so far down the rabbit hole of their ideas that they can't perceive anything else, the audience completes the work. It does. Yeah. So it's very important for artists that an audience is there. And within that audience, there's layers. There's the people who lean forward in kind of breathless anticipation of the space in between every note that a jazz, horn blower is blowing. There's people who are like, I really have no idea what it is that I'm experiencing right now. All of those layers are part of this kind of consciousness of a moment. That consciousness of a moment reads to that audience, to the artist and to the audience. And tending to it is really the work that we're doing. As an artistic director, as a curator, as artists, we're tending to the consciousness of that air in that moment in that way.
So how much art and things are you looking at to make that? Because you can't put on that many.
No.
So how many do you have to look at, and what's that process like? Are you out there talking to artists? How's it go?
Because I've been doing this work for so long now, I can't really put a defined line around it, but actively 300 conversations are going on all the time so that I can make probably 55 projects land in a given year.
Are you doing that by yourself?
No, I have a team, but I'm the main, there's always everybody on my team, whether it's the development director or marketing and communications or the deputy director or, the production and tech people. We're exposed to a lot of work. They care about art, so they see it. And they have affinities and they have literacy and they have knowledge. So it's like I start working on, here's the major work that we're going to commit to. Those tend to be dance and theater because they take the biggest toll on our budget, or international projects because it takes the largest toll in, freight, flights, and God forbid, visas.
So like a group like SANKAI
Juku.
Yeah. So how do you evaluate this, or do you just know that they're great?
Yeah.
And what's the piece about? It's about this piece. Is it about expressions? Is it about emotion? How do you make a connection to this and know that this is something to do?
Yeah. Well, so SANKAI Juku, whose maestro is a man named Amagatsu, and he is like the choreographer. But in their dance tradition of Buto, the choreographer is truly like the maestro of the form, and he's one of the last living links to the original creators of Buto as a dance form. Buto was really a response through the avant-garde of Japan in contemporary dance, reacting against kabuki theater and various other things. It's like, and the dropping of the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The body being now a site of profound trauma, scarred deeply. How do you dance that? How do you dance that language? And so they invented their own vocabulary physically to be able to do it.
Now, because you could look at that in isolation and just be like, oh yeah, what's it got to do with us? Why does it need to be here on our stages? Why does our audience need to understand this?
Yeah. Well, to me, if you look at the history of dance, so if you put me in the role of how do I look after an art form, and let's take dance, and ballet doesn't really need my looking after, quite frankly. If it did, I would put that into our programming lines. But the dance forms of other cultures that may be unfamiliar to a Western audience, not that LA is purely a Western audience, because it is absolutely not, This is a cultural tradition that is revered. It is deeply studied. People spend their lifetime training in it. It has affected dance history because of what it does.
So do you think of a person sitting in a seat who's coming to see all of these shows? Or do you see it as a faceless audience that you're playing for different aspects? Like how do you define it in your mind when you're thinking like, well, yeah, this should be on the stage in one of these theaters?
Yeah. I think of, first and foremost, I think of the artists who are making the forms, where they come from, what they're doing, what they're on about. Then I think about the caliber of where they sit in various trajectories of these art forms, which you would do if you were a museum curator, as it were, and I do in the performing arts. Then I start thinking about the work itself, which project, which production. And in a project like this, it takes those artists years to get the resources together to make the work. Then there's a kind of assessment going on of like, am I going to present the work or not? When I make the decision towards yes, it is about carrying that art form forward, continuing to expand its audience. And artists in live performance practice, their sole real economy is their mobility. So if I decide that Butoh doesn't matter, and New York decides that Butoh doesn't matter, and Minneapolis and Chicago decide that Butoh doesn't matter, SANKAI JUKU will stop to exist in the United States of America.
Big responsibility.
Do you ever have the experience where you walk into a room where very few people have ever been in the room and you see something and you go, I can't believe that? Do you remember one of those?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting, I'll try and, So Miranda July is one of those people for me. And Miranda lived in Portland, Oregon. I lived in Portland, Oregon. And I had literally seen, and I still do this, I'd seen this little tiny kind of handmade flyer, that clearly somebody had spent some serious hours at Kinko's making this kind of thing. And it was her promo thing for a thing she was doing, a small performance she was going to do at this, wretched kind of garage band club. And it would be in between sets of thrasher bands, basically. So I went. I went because I could tell that the intelligent care that had gone into that flyer meant that that same intelligent being was going to be standing on that stage. And what she was doing was literally like a 10-minute monologue with a VHR cassette where she's interacting with herself. It was 10 minutes. The other band's setting up behind her, the whole thing. And off she goes. And that intelligence was right there. But she had not made a full-length work. And she came out of performance. She was doing other things as well.
So do you just go right up backstage and say, hey, I saw that thing? I mean, you're probably the one person there who would really know what it is. And she probably doesn't even know what you're talking about in the beginning.
No, completely. So it was like that. And so I made sure that I knew how to find her. And then later I went, let's commission you to make a full-length work. Well, that full-length work turned into like a 2-hour. I mean, you go from a 10-minute interlude to a full 2-hour production in time and space, but that began something. And then we worked together on other projects, but it's that, and I still will do that. I will be, in some city somewhere, and you can always find readily available to you what the major cultural institutions are focusing on. I will know hands down if I'm in St. Louis or New Orleans or San Francisco or New York, what their symphony orchestras are doing, maybe what their chamber orchestras are doing, certainly what some of the major kind of clubs would be on about in music, for example. But you can look at the interstitial spaces and find, somebody's little flyer, somebody's postcard, somebody's pinup thing.
Are you always looking for those?
I'm always looking. And in those, I can tell, like, if somebody's got a flyer for their, let's say it's a piano bar and they're doing a late night concert, and there's no image of the performer. It's just the text on a flyer. If that thing's in cursive writing, I am not going. Mm-hmm. I know already what's going to be happening. I don't need to be there.
You can recognize an artist.
Absolutely. But you can feel it when there's attention to the aesthetic information that's sitting in any. You can tell it on somebody's Instagram. You can tell it on somebody's Facebook. You can tell it through wit and optimism and the lack thereof, or any of those kinds of things. So I look for those, and I will make myself, beyond the things that I'm already there to see, go at 1:00 in the morning and see something.
But what is the it? Because is it the expression of the voice? Like, is it the humanity that's coming through, the authenticity? What's the difference between not going with the cursive but saying, whoa, is it a sensing of another person's expression? And is that what we're after?
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, it's longer, but in that kind of very quick, almost chemical thing that can come off of a piece of paper on a bulletin board, it's that somebody put enough attentive care to represent their project idea and their sense of welcome. You get a sense of who they're trying to make come, and you get a sense of how much effort they put into it. And you get the other sense, which is, I have an image that I'm aspiring to have. I have a brand identity that I'm seeking. That one will put in cursive writing for one thing, or we'll put a very lovely kind of photo something in there. You can tell from those things if somebody is pursuing the kind of brand identity that they think will make them successful versus the authenticity of what they're trying to convey as an artist.
Is there a demarcation line in your mind where you go, this is great art, and these just aren't going to make it? Not even necessarily the people. It's just like, is there like, it's like I look at those, I'm an untrained viewer, right? So
Yeah.
I look at it, I would never be able to be on the street and go like, oh, well, this one, right? There has to be an aesthetic at a certain place or some understanding of recognizing what great art is. And is that years of doing it? Is it, what is that thing?
To me, it's not so much about how I'm not going shopping. It's not like going shopping for great art, because you can do it. You can go shopping for it. But it's literally about what are those kinds of ingredients where an artist has spent thousands of hours finding form for a perspective. They are manifesting the forms to carry, like a vessel, perspective, questioning, so on and so forth, that's emanating out of their practice. They're not making a product, and that's where I see the line. A line when somebody is absolutely focused on making a product. That doesn't mean that artists don't make incredible shows, truly, super refined. But if you are making a product, you know the outcome in advance and you're aiming for it. You know that you want 90% of the audience in that hall to feel exactly the same feelings at exactly the same time. And that creates a kind of formula of what popular culture and popular entertainment tends to be able to do, which doesn't mean popular entertainment isn't full of artistry, but there is a line between the public pursuit of an unknown gesture that is authentically being made by an artist around the time that we're living in.
And what is your role with the artists? Like we talk about our work as being in service of people and their ideas. Like our role is to be a little thing that helps somebody say something. What's your role?
Well, it would be similar. I play a role in helping someone say something. It's just that it takes on stages, world tours, various things like that. But
and big budgets.
Well, sometimes, that's a whole other topic. But it's literally, I see myself as facilitating, which sometimes requires beating back the icebergs of indifference in a public or in a resources. Sometimes it's facilitating ultimately it's about how do I uphold the integrity of this artist's work so that it has the best chance of offering that expressive truth through the lens that artist has. And I have to be in sync with what that is long before they've made the work.
That's a great ending, but I have one last question for you, which is, this aesthetic that you have, this eye, this feeling, were you born with it? Like, where did it come from? I mean,
my mom was a potter, and she really struggled. I mean, she was born on the Okanagan Colville Indian Reservation, and I was born not far from there in Washington State. It's not like we were in the major urban capitals by any stretch, but she worked very hard and diligently around a passion she had, which was pottery. Totally functional pottery. But I watched her put love into that clay all the time. She didn't try and make monumental things. She wasn't trying to be famous. She wanted to be able to keep her studio practice going to a certain extent because she derived joy from it, and the people that she could give these things to or sell them to derive joy. But what I watched was not how, she would struggle against form, or like shit would blow up in the kiln at night and the whole load would be gone and lost and she'd spent 6 months making it, things like that. But to me, it was about, and I've heard other artists say this term, it was about watching somebody practice the deep ethic of their optimism by putting love into the forms that she had a talent and predisposition for. And I can see that whether somebody's behind a guitar, behind a mic, doing a dance movement, putting something on a page. They are practicing a deep ethic of optimism. And I have a facility for desiring the way in which I can do what artists do, which is the paying of exquisite attention to things that are otherwise neglected. They pay attention to, like poets, you see the world and you see the lens through a different way. You notice some sprout coming out of a crack in the asphalt, and you can create a whole entire metaphoric landscape about human civilization. But other people step right on it, step across it, don't see. So in the time periods when a culture starts feeling exhausted, there's anxiety, there's all of these things, you can count on the fact that an artist is still looking. Okay. You guys have that practice at Wondros. I follow you guys. It's like, here's this gem, here's this jewel, here's this, and you are putting love out because you're saying, I see this with an exquisite attention and I'm going to amplify it.
I agree with that.
That is, people
That's
think
a better
that,
articulation than we can do.
no,
but yes,
but it's what
correct.
it is.
Yeah.
And that feeling state, you have faith that there's people who are going to encounter that gesture as it moves along into our cultural river, that somebody's going to encounter that gesture and a gift is received. That is your ethos.
Yeah.
It's the same. I'm doing the same thing. I'll see something and I can say, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I know I want to share it.
Yeah.
And then I begin the process of moving heaven and earth to make sure that that's shared. And that, that's the other thing. I should have said it, but I watch, even as the arts now struggle with its resourcing, or any creative endeavor that has some form of authentic integrity that's trying to put its hands around, we're being asked to turn every single person in our world into a consumer.
I understand. Yeah.
And this is a place where that is resisted. You're trying to show an individual as an audience member or whatever that you are valued and you're necessary to culture beyond the consumer relationship of a transaction. Right. How do we keep people awake to that possibility?
We're not a participatory democracy if we don't have art, because this is where we have the opportunity to change things a lot.
Yeah.
Before it gets to votes, it gets to art.
Exactly. And if we don't know who we are in relation to our empathies, or if our anxieties and our manipulation and our exhaustion takes over, holy crap.
Yeah.
We are
Great.
lost for good.
Yeah. I understand. I agree. Yeah. Although, I believe that things will always get better, that they cycle through darkness and then we return. I mean,
I agree.
I
necessarily
worry
agree with me.
No, I just have a little more anxiety about them.
Yeah.
I think we're in a dark time.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was, I was in New York the other day, and I was there to kind of meet with foundations and see if I can get them to hustle a few shekels for me, and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, juxtapose, I was invited to go to a Sotheby's auction, art object auction.
Jeez.
I lost it. I was in tears because the staggering. I could have been on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, but it was Mark Rothko's,
right?
Things like that.
Yeah.
And I literally had this feeling of going, holy shit, that painting is being dislocated. I was like, I'm the painting going now up on an auction block.
Yes.
Here's my body. Ooh. But the staggering sums of money, my God, were just like crazy. Unbelievable.
Well, it's like, I always see that with guitars, because my family's about guitars, but it's like they're all in Japan now. They're just all got swooped up and they're gone, and it's like where are the Sex Pistols when you need them? You know what I mean? Like where's the new Sex Pistols? It hasn't. We haven't seen it yet, but the great bands come out of this strife, that we're experiencing, and we just haven't gotten to this place yet. But they always do emerge.
In the ephemeral nature of performing arts, contemporary performing arts, whether it's Sex Pistols or a chamber orchestra, hopefully doing a living composer's work. But that ephemeral culture and how we tend to it reflects the capacity of our culture, because it is not really something you can buy and own and stick on a shelf.
Sure.
Let it accrue value over time, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very hard to entrepreneurialize it unless you are a kind of commercial entity.
Even then, I think it's difficult. I look at jazz, and it's very hard to. It's it's like, how do we protect this intrinsically American art form? And
what you said, and that exact. The old Crest Theater on Westwood Boulevard.
Sure. Yeah.
So we've bought it. It'll be called the Nimoy. I still got to raise the rest of the money to.
Geez, the Nimoy just
renovate
randomly.
Yeah. Well, Leonard and Susan. Leonard is who really helped champion me when I got here.
Oh, really?
He really understood what I was on about in theater and dance and various things.
He seemed like a very cool guy.
Incredible
Although
dude.
We really know him as Spock, but he was much more nuanced than that.
Oh, yeah. And so it'll be named in his legacy. But it is the kind of space, it's 250 seats max, very well equipped. And I'm creating this consortium of users, like the Jazz Bakery might come in there and some others, because exactly that. There's a certain, you can deal with Royce, or for that matter, a stadium, well after, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And that place, now, it's like how, I keep describing it as, in the realms of gentrification and all of it. How do you create affordable housing for public ideas? And jazz is like my first thing to go to in this city, because
wonderful.
the clubs are dying.
Yeah.
Or you can't really hear the work, because, even clubs now, they're like, yeah, okay, you can do something if I perceive that you can sell enough beer.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the gatekeeping function.
Right.
It's not ticket sales, it's beer.
Right.
And so where do you make that moment where you emerge towards something, or you start the practice of having a kind of interplay with a public and an audience space?
Yeah.
That's different. If you go straight to Facebook and you're trying to get enough likes and clicks and this, that, and the other thing, you'll be hired for something, but it's going to be something that takes you away from where is that fundamental truth of what I wanted to do with my horn or my violin or whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of artists, they don't want to make Pepsi commercials.
No.
They want to be, it's like they want to, they want to just do their art.
Yeah.
The
last project we had on the season, it was last week, the week before, was Lil Buck and John Boogs. And Lil Buck's a street dancer.
Sure.
And he has
We know
made,
Lil Buck.
you know, so of course he has made a way to get himself off of the conditions that he came from.
Sure.
And brand access and all of those things. But of course, where do you get to now make a work of art? You're not seen as an artist anymore. You're seen as something else.
Yeah.
And this was heavy on his soul. So he made the work. Love heals all wounds. Well, this took a hell of a lot of work to get off the ground. We presented it. And it's for him to create enough artistic integrity and capacity in that part of his identity that there's mobility, so that he can work with young people to show them the way to start engaging off of the street and into a form.
Yeah.
But if they don't do it, then it's like eventually it gets boring. You feel empty.
Sure.
No matter how many spots you've done for Veuve Clicquot and it helps your family and all that, there's something later that, if that's even your route. But for the person who doesn't have that route and they cannot even afford to get into a club, well, hell, we used to be able to say that great artists will always find their way. If finding your way is a 20-year proposition, they won't hold on.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm trying to hit in between there. So it's not about world class and blah, blah, blah. It's about explore your ideas in public and let us take the financial burden off of it so that you can build your own tapestry there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Anyway.
Thank you so much for coming in.
With you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Click here for the next episode.
And come back to Jesse's office, because you never know who you're going to meet when you get here. Thanks.